War and chaos have always forged history, and right now it seems that everywhere you look across the global map, you can find a degree of chaos that may just echo across the next few decades. The spiderweb of global crises touched every region, every faith, every problem of power that American policymakers have spent decades trying to solve. Ukraine. These days, it seems that war has been receding from the headlines, even while the conflict is white hot. Russia is again on the advance, and Volodymyr Zelensky is again pleading with the West to get directly involved in its war for survival. Gaza, that war again in the headlines. Today, as the International Criminal Court pursues arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and for the leader of Hamas. The ICC's message: nobody is above the law. The message from the White House: you cannot compare a terrorist to an elected leader and the United States' closest ally in the region.
There is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And it's clear Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection. But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide.
And Iran, which suddenly finds itself confronting an internal power struggle. A helicopter crash that killed its hardliner president leaves Tehran without a bulwark of the brutal, theocratic regime. His death means the jockeying to replace Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah, begins much sooner rather than years down the road, as many observers had expected. And here in the United States, where, of course, the November 2024 election and who wins that race may determine if the world can depend on America or if they should expect America alone. For more on the arrest warrants, let me bring in Mehdi Hasan, author of Win Every Argument, The Art of Debating, and Jonathan Schanzer, former terrorism finance analyst at the U.S. Treasury Department. Mehdi, I want to start with you, and I know that we will spend a lot of time discussing the part that has gotten this really to the front pages, which is the charges against the Israeli leaders. But on the issue of Hamas, is it justified for there to be such a delay in bringing charges against Hamas for actions that happened many, many months ago on October 7th that we've known about? Those atrocities have been clear for a long time, and yet the charges only come now.
I'm not sure, actually. I think that Karim Khan, the ICC chief prosecutor, would say that he was building a very careful case. He's a very careful lawyer. He has been there for, I think, a few years, since 2021. And when he became chief prosecutor, he said he would be looking at Israel-Palestine because the ICC said they had jurisdiction over crimes committed on Palestinian territory. He's interviewed survivors. He talks about it very eloquently in his statement today. And I think, look, Hamas should be held to account for what we all saw them do on October the 7th, the killing of civilians, hostage-taking. Some of us said on the day those are war crimes. So I'm glad they're being held to account. The problem, of course, is that some people, including the President of the United States, say only Hamas should be held to account for crimes committed in that part of the world, even though since October the 7th, tragically, we have seen many more innocent people killed on the other end, killed by the Israeli war machine. And I think it's quite right that, as you said in your introduction, no one is above the law. And this whole nonsense about moral equivalence, I've been hearing it all day. Moral equivalence. No one's saying there's any moral equivalence. People are saying that there is one law, international humanitarian law. Everyone should be held to it, whether you are a government, whether you are a militant group, whether you are a terrorist, whether you're an individual, whether you're a prime minister. No one is above the law. And Karim Khan is doing the right thing in bringing charges against people in that part of the world, requesting arrest warrants for people who we've all seen Netanyahu and the leaders of Hamas carry out horrific things in front of our eyes.
Jonathan, your response?
Look, I'm not going to get into this moral equivalence thing because I think it's a ridiculous thing to talk about. We know that Hamas deliberately went out and raped women, slaughtered 1,200 people, took 240 people hostage, and the Israelis are now responding in a defensive war, and they have every right to do it, and they're putting their own soldiers at risk while they're trying to deliver aid, and that's the charge that the ICC brought against Israel, that they were waging a siege, when in fact they're actually putting their own soldiers at risk. But
well, Jonathan,
I think it's
can
important
I ask you about that for a second there?
Here.
Let me ask you about that, because I think that is, as you point out, a key part of what the ICC is saying. They're talking about the use of starvation and deprivation as tools of war. And you may remember that senior Israeli officials at the onset of this war they stated pretty clearly no power, no water would be going to Gaza until the hostages were freed. That was pointed out at the time to be a statement of collective punishment. There is, as most international observers say, a famine on the verge of descending on Gaza right now. Shouldn't that be something that is under the scrutiny of the ICC?
Well, let me just say, on the verge is not a famine, right? And I think we need to differentiate here. And everybody keeps saying on the verge, but we've not yet seen facts that back this up. There is no UN criteria for how many calories need to come in every day for this not to be a siege. The Israelis are actually bringing in massive numbers of trucks, and they're doing it at peril to their own soldiers. And moreover, I think we just need to say this. I have not ever seen a successful case brought by any international court in any circumstance where you've seen this siege thing actually play out. I think it's a Hail Mary. There doesn't seem to be, not only have we not seen any cases brought, but I don't think we've ever seen a successful case brought on this. We know that this ICC prosecutor was actually negotiating with the Israelis and with the United States up until a few days ago. This is a monkey court if they're negotiating about what kind of charges they're going to bring. And then they finally bring them, and it just does not hold water. And we can see now the reaction of the President of the United States, the reaction of members of Congress. They're going to sanction this prosecutor, just like they did the last one, because the ICC is simply illegitimate. It is not taken seriously here in the United States because they pick and choose how they want to apply this very loose interpretation of international law.
Mehdi, I want you to respond, but I want to correct myself.
I do.
The United States has already said, Samantha Power, a U.S. official, has said that famine has begun in Gaza. Mehdi, your response to what Jonathan said?
So just on the ICC, America's not a party to the ICC, so the rest of the world doesn't really care whether America likes the ICC or not. That's not really relevant here. The jurisdiction is the ICC's. As for Karim Khan, he was actually Israel's favorite choice for prosecutor in 2021, as the Israeli media reported at the time. Now suddenly he's unpopular. He's the greatest anti-Semite of our times, according to Netanyahu, simply because he's asked for arrest warrants. Jonathan says we're on the verge of famine. As you said, Abby, Samantha Power disagrees. In fact, you know who disagrees with Jonathan? Cindy McCain, the head of the World Food Program, the wife of the most pro-Israel American senator of my lifetime, John McCain, says northern Gaza is in a full-blown famine. She said the other day that children in Gaza are dying as skeletons, right? That is what is going on in Gaza. She also says Israel is not allowing the World Food Program full access. Jonathan wants you to believe that this is a defensive war. He wants you to disbelieve every major human rights group in the world that says otherwise. He wants you to believe there's no famine in Gaza and disbelieve every major humanitarian aid agency on the planet that disagrees with him. The facts are pretty clear to people who are watching. There's a reason why a majority of Canadians want to see an ICC investigation. There's a reason why a majority of Britons say Israel is committing war crimes. There's a reason why a majority of French, Belgians, Germans, Swedes have all told pollsters they think Israeli officials should be prosecuted for war crimes. There's a reason why a plurality of Americans, according to a recent poll that my organization Zeteo did, say Israel is guilty of war crimes. Because we all have eyes. We can see children being pulled from the rubble. We can see churches, mosques, refugee camps, hospitals, schools, libraries, universities, cemeteries being bombed. And as for Joe Biden himself accused Israel of indiscriminate bombing, Abby. His words, indiscriminate bombing. That is the literal definition of a war crime.
Jonathan?
Yeah, look, I mean, you want to talk about the evidence that's being collected right now? It's being collected by the UN. Now, dig down a little further, and you're going to realize that there's only one major agency that has been active inside Gaza, and that has been UNRWA. And we know that UNRWA has been a partner with Hamas in carrying out the war crimes that we're talking about that Hamas has committed.
True.
And by the way, no one's talking about the fact that Hamas has been diverting aid when it comes into Gaza. Why are we not talking about the siege that they're putting on their own people? And one more thing here I've got to just say is that if you look at what the charges are that the ICC has brought, they are not talking about shooting charges. They're not talking about kinetic strikes that they're calling war crimes on the part of the Israelis, because they know that Israel has actually conducted itself on the battlefield in ways that far exceed the United States or any other Western power in recent years on the battlefield. That ratio of civilian to combatant deaths is drastically lower. They know they can't bring those charges, so they've tried this Hail Mary, and it's just simply not going to stick.
Jonathan, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to kind of address just the substance of the issue of especially when it comes to food and water and basic human needs, the United States had to build a pier on the coast of Gaza to get aid in because it was so difficult to get the Israelis to allow basic aid in over land. Not just, aid trucks are coming in, that is true, but not as many as were coming in before the war. And, independent observers have said basic things are being blocked at the borders by Israel for all kinds of different reasons. All of that adds up to something that I think some people would say at least should be under scrutiny. Do you think Israel should even be subject to scrutiny for how it is carrying out this war?
Look, of course it should be under scrutiny, and every country that wages war will come under scrutiny in today's day and age. Now, look, I actually went to Cyprus a few weeks ago, and I went and talked to the people that were going to build this pier, and the people that were going to deliver aid to this pier, and the people that were going to vet it. And I can just tell you that the amount of time and effort that went into this, you've got Israeli customs agents sitting over there reviewing these packages because they were so uncomfortable with the way that it was coming in from Egypt or the things that were coming in directly to their ports, and they couldn't process them well enough. They took the criticism that the United States leveled, and they've taken action. And so now we have this incredible system where the United States has built a pier. We've got the Cypriot authorities, we've got the Emiratis, we've got the Israelis reviewing what comes through and approving it and then sending it on, and we're going to see a massive uptick.
So
but
it
by the
sounds
way,
like you're acknowledging that there's been a problem. It sounds like that's what you're acknowledging, that there was a problem.
Of course there was a problem.
Yeah.
This is a war zone. There are problems in every war zone.
Mehdi,
and there are always going to be challenges.
Can I?
Always.
Go ahead, Mehdi.
Can I just come in and respond to something Jonathan said a moment ago? He said the only evidence we have of war crimes that's being collected is by UN and by UNRWA, and they're all compromised. That's just not true. I myself have interviewed on my show multiple American doctors who are on the ground in Gaza who have testified to what is going on, what they're seeing with their own lying eyes. I have a friend who is a doctor who went out and served in the European hospital in Gaza. He saw children being brought into the hospital with gunshot wounds to the head. Right? Those are crimes. Those have been witnessed by American citizens, British citizens, French citizens. They're all on the record. To pretend this is just about Hamas or UNRWA is nonsense, right? The evidence is there for anyone who's been to Gaza.
Mehdi is not an international lawyer, and nor are the doctors. It is not up to you to decide what a war crime is. And by the way, I'm not even sure that it's up to the ICC at this point.
I agree. It's up to the chief prosecutor of the ICC, who is a lawyer, a very respected one. And can I finish my point? Just to go back to what Abby said at the start, if they don't want to be charged with war crimes, maybe they shouldn't have done war crimes. Yoav Gallant is being charged with starvation. This is a man, the defense minister of Israel, who said on October the 9th, I'm ordering a total siege of Gaza. No fuel, no electricity, no food. It's closed. Well, maybe he shouldn't have said and done that. Maybe he wouldn't have an arrest warrant out or an application for an arrest warrant against him today if he hadn't done that.
All right, Mehdi and Jonathan,
this man is seriously
We have to leave it there. Thank you both very much for joining us.